Okay, 10:02, officially starting the meeting. Hi, everybody. I'm Rosemary Burns Velez, your hardworking chair, or trying to be hardworking chair. I'm going to call the meeting to order now. Welcome you all to this, I think it's our first Civil Service Senate meeting of the year. We have one more coming up in April, where we are hoping to have the president visit us, but that is really very dependent upon her availability. And so I'm going to move just directly into our reports. The chair's report, we've had a very active month, and there was we had one Senate meeting. Then we had our Senate meeting that's to be held on the 23rd was canceled and then rescheduled to be the same day. I mean, it was opened up again. I don't know what word I can use for that. And I think that the largest feeling from groups that everybody reinstated. Thank you so much, Daryl. You're the wordsmith for sure. I think the biggest issue that most of the Senate groups had with the meeting being canceled wasn't so much that the meeting was being canceled, it was that people felt like they were not consulted about the meeting being canceled. And so we did meet as the leadership of the consultative committees and have a discussion and hear from people. I actually did not say a single word at that meeting. I just wanted to hear what other people's opinions were. And the final resolution is that we are going to have the Senate meeting. But unfortunately, as you all may understand, once the president's schedule was opened, it's like a vacuum and it sucked all those other meetings into it. And she's not available for that Senate meeting, and neither is the provost. So I'm not sure how it's going to go forward, but I will report back at our next consultative committee meeting what actually happens in that Senate meeting. Aside from that, we've had some conversations with the Office of Conflict Resolution. We have gotten quite a few civil service employees who've approached us about their bumping rights or what rights they have when they are asked to go into an HR meeting, who can represent them. And that's something that Daryl and I have discussed, and we've discussed with Dina as well, as being a need for civil service to have some kind of representation, or at least a little more clear steps to what our rights are when there is a layoff or just any kind of disciplinary action. Because we found that it really isn't clear who handles that, whether it be the Office of Conflict Resolution. We, as the chair and the chair-elect, really cannot go to every one of the discussions. And the Senate cannot have somebody from the Senate be representative in those meetings. It's really just between the civil service employee and their supervisor, and they could have an HR observer as well. So I think I'm hitting my 3 minutes right there. So I'm going to move on to the subcommittee reports. I see that Hannah's here. Hannah, do you have a compensation and benefits report for us today?
No major update. We have our first meeting next Wednesday on the 22nd, and Alex Hard has volunteered to be the chair-elect for the Comp and Benefits Committee. So we'll just kind of be piecing together what our priorities are for the year starting next week.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to communications and outreach. There were a few changes there, and I will hand it over to Sarah Bachman.
Great, thanks for having me. I'm going to chair this year. Heidi's going to co-chair to come and prepare for next year. And then I'm going to rely on our past chair to try to help build my historical knowledge of some of the work. So that's our plan moving forward. and we meet tomorrow. And we meet later today. I'm so sorry.
Later today.
I'm whew, whirlwind of these days here. And I've sent out a brief agenda to our committee members. If that didn't reach you, if you're on our committee and didn't receive the meeting invite update with our small agenda, Rosemary will be joining us. Please let me know so I can get that to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. And then we have the employment rules. I saw that Charles Rank is here and also Raymond Muno.
Yeah, so we have our first meeting next Thursday. And we have already received, and it's later on in the agenda, but some requests, maybe not so much requests, but imperatives to change a few rules that refer to regions' policies that have changed, and then other wording that needs to be removed in compliance with federal rules regarding discrimination, so-called illegal discrimination. And so that will be coming up as well.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. I feel like I was forgetting something, but now, of course, I can't remember it again. So we will move on to civil service bylaw changes. That's Amber Bethke.
Hi, everyone. Give me a second here to get my screen shared. So while I'm doing that, my name is Amber Bathke. I am the Senior Senate Associate and Operations Lead in the Senate office. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some proposed changes that we have to the Constitution and bylaws and rules. So a little bit of background. This came out of a Senate office review of the governing documents for all of the Senates. And we kind of just went through it with an eye to things that we've been noticing the last few years that are confusing, conflicting, that need some more clarification, that are maybe like don't align well across the Senates, or that are just maybe impractical. So that's kind of what the basis for these suggestions are. They're proposals. We are bringing them to you to consult as the owners of this document. So nothing is set in stone, but I will walk you through our proposals and you can let us know what you think. So, proposed changes to
Amber, could I interrupt you for just half a second?
Sure.
The link on our agenda doesn't open your document.
This document that I have here that's showing.
Yeah, it just opens our docket again.
Okay, I'll get that fixed.
Okay. Yeah, so the
right.
document that I sent ahead of time, I think, was the memo. So this that I'm showing is a little bit different, but it basically just is copy and pasted from the memo in a different order. So proposed changes to the Constitution, which require either an approval of a 2/3 majority of all voting members at the Senate at one meeting, or a majority of all voting members of the Senate at each of two meetings. So it suffice to say it's a high threshold for approval. And we're not necessarily asking for a vote today. This is kind of more of an FYI and start thinking about it sort of conversation here. But that's what the threshold for approval would be when we get to that point. So the first change is to delete some inapplicable language that says something about if CSCC members aren't already members of the Senate, which my understanding is that CSCC members are members of the Senate. So that language is conflicting. Section 4 meetings, we've proposed to just add a footnote clarifying that in practice, the Senate office sets the date, time, and location of CS Senate meetings with approval from the CSCC. Section 5, agenda and minutes, clarify that the docket items should be submitted to the Senate office because Dina is the person who keeps track of all that kind of stuff. And move the deadline from 1 week ahead of Senate meetings to 2 weeks to give us a little bit more time to pull things together and send it out in a timely manner, so senators have time to think about it.
Amber, there's a question from Charles.
So for the all CSCC members being members of the CS Senate. I'm not sure about that. Or what about the ex officio? Are they technically members of the CSCC, or is that treated separately here?
No, yeah, that would, we might need to clarify that it's like all elected members or all voting members or something, but yeah, that's a good point. That's
Okay.
the intent. Yeah,
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
yep. All right, moving on to the bylaws. So the bylaws changes require either a majority of all voting members of the Senate or a majority of all members present and voting at each of 2 meetings. So a high threshold, but not as high as the Constitution is, as it should be. Election of members to the Civil Service Senate. The suggestion here is to provide a provision for election by default if there are few candidates than seats. So if there's, 3 seats open and only 2 people interested in serving, then we don't have to send out a whole ballot to basically approve those 2 people. This was the suggestion I found in, I don't know, University of Michigan or somebody, Senate bylaws, and thought that is something that would be useful for us. Clarifying that the chair and chair-elect may go beyond the 6-year eligibility rule. So this is something that's come up frequently throughout the years because it's not really clear if the chair and chair-elect have to be, confined to that 6-year or 2-term eligibility rule. And every year we kind of determine it and figure it out and then have to remember what we decided the year before. And so the intent here was just to make a call, either yes or no, they can or they can't. We're suggesting that the call be that they can, because otherwise you have to time things really, just right to be able to have the eligibility left to be chair-elect and then chair. And also it makes sense that members, or the people who are applying to be chair or chair-elect have been members for a while, so they, kind of have had some experience before running for the chair and chair-elect positions. Election of civil service members to the University Senate, just the same suggestion about election by default. And these are bylaws changes to the committees section. So update procedures related to interpretations of policies. This is a really weird clause that's in all of the Senate documents and doesn't really make sense with how policies work now. I'm guessing it's a holdover from the time when Senates did kind of make policies, but and were able to change the policy that they themselves made. Now there's a whole other process. So we've just proposed some language that makes it still possible for interpretations to happen, although I haven't seen that happen in my entire time working here. But just makes it clear that the policy owner and other people also have to agree. The Senate can't just unilaterally decide to change a policy or to make an interpretation to a policy. Updates to committee charges. So this would be the CSCC charge, and these are probably the biggest changes I would guess. So, and the proposals are to simplify the CSCC membership requirements slightly, to not require the Twin Cities seats to be broken up by unit, just to make it easier to get those seats filled. And then also clarify that the chair and chair-elect, only the chair and chair-elect relinquish their unit affiliated seat. So on the Senate. So the reason that we propose this change is because there's kind of an endless cycle of elections when it's like we fill the Senate, Civil Service Senate, the 37 Senate seats, and then elect people into the CSCC, and then you have the Senate seat that's open again. So you have to do that election again. So if people don't relinquish their Senate seats, it's just like 50 senators, 13 of them also serve as CSCC members, then that makes it a little bit simpler for elections. And then just changing the nomination period duration to 1 week instead of 1 month, which seems in today's day and age just a really long time to have nominations open.
Amber, can you also speak to how some of these suggestions mirror what's already happening in all the other senates when that comes up? Because I just want to make it clear in some of these cases, the suggestions are so that there is alignment with what the other bodies are already doing for some of these things that have been just unique to civil service.
Yeah,
If-
I mean, the consultative committees all kind of work differently, so there's not really big alignment there. But that, and then the chair and chair-elect thing, that's the same, this is the same call that we are suggesting to the PNA Senate. It's already the way it works in the faculty senate, and honestly, I don't know how it works in the student senate. Um, yeah, so those are, let's see, if I go back. The other ones don't really apply to the other senates. So I think that's all. Yeah, I've got another slide for my next topic, but there's no substantive changes to the rules proposed. So I think if you look in the big document that has all the the marked up changes, there might be some minor changes proposed to the rules, but nothing like that changes any meaning really, just rewording and stuff. Ray.
On the updates to CSCC charge, the two things seem to be in conflict with each other of you can be from any unit, but then you don't relinquish your unit affiliated seat. Because we've always, in my time in here, that when you're on CSCC, everybody represents everyone, not specifically unit, whereas on the Senate, people are elected from units. And it seems like by removing this requirement on CSCC, we could be very heavy with, like everyone's from the library. I mean, we could have filled every Senate seat, every CSCC seat from the library because they had a very active civil service group, but we wanted to draw people and have everybody represented because we are such a diverse thing. So though the two things actually seem to be in conflict with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is, and again, these are just kind of suggestions, and if you all feel differently, then that's totally fine. I would say to that it wouldn't be like, so you wouldn't give up your unit seat. It would just be like as you said, it potentially all the Twin City seats could be filled by the library. That we're still maintaining the system campus like slots on CSCC because that's a little bit different. But I would, my hope would be that elections would take care of that. Like, okay, everybody else is already from the library, so let's elect this person. But, that there's pros and cons for sure. Any other questions, comments? And I can certainly leave this with you all for CSC to discuss further or, or whatever you want to do. Like I said, this was just kind of a introductory conversation. So
Yeah, I think rules, I'm saying I know that the rules group will want to look at everything. And then should we connect back to you or is there another way? Just with Dean?
Yeah, with me, and then I'll bring it to my team.
Okay, thank you. And then if you're ready to move on to your next thing, tips and tricks for civil service engagement with University Senate.
yes, so first, just want to say I am very grateful that you all have worked so hard to fill as many of the University Senate seats as you've been able to. I know it's been a struggle between people unfortunately being laid off or reclassed into PNA or just other challenges. So we appreciate all the hard work. So for those of you who are on the or are on the University Senate, just a little bit of information and sort of maybe some advice on how to engage there. So those of you who have been to those meetings know that there are some faculty who tend to dominate the conversation. And I totally can recognize it may be intimidating to try to speak up, especially if your views don't align with what they're saying, as civil service staff that don't have the same protections that faculty have. So just a few tips on kind of how to do that. And the number one thing I would say is get in the queue early. We will be using a Google form instead of a Google Sheet this time to get in the queue. So, just if you have something you want to say, get in there fast. We will do the same thing we did last time where we rotate through the constituencies, and we're going to try this time starting with student and then civil service and then P&A and faculty as the queue permits, to go in that order instead, to give people a little bit of chance to talk before the faculty say their piece. I also will say that it's really nice when people are able to articulate concerns that are specific to civil service or civil service staff. Not that you should exclusively speak to those things. If you have something to say that pertains to everybody, then please still say it. But it just sometimes, especially the faculty and students, to be honest, don't know the different concerns that the staff groups have. And so having people say those is really, really useful. On the flip side, sometimes there's people that chime in and want to talk about a really specific situation that pertains to just their department or one person. And that's kind of like probably better to route through Rosemary and Daryl to bring up with Senate leadership or something than to talk about it at the Senate meeting, because almost certainly nobody will know the answer or be involved in that specific situation. But if I had to say between the two, better to speak up than not. Be aware that Senate meetings are recorded and they're posted to YouTube, so they're out there. If you prefer to be in the anonymous in the minutes, I can do that, but the recording does still exist. This next one is advice that I give to anyone who will listen, is that if during Q&A, like to the president and stuff, try to have a clear question as opposed to a question that's really a comment or it's not clear what you want them to answer. It makes it easier for them to just say, okay, yeah, here's the answer to that question, instead of trying to respond to something that's not clearly a question. And the biggest thing that I will say is please do not hesitate to speak up. It is true that faculty tend to dominate the conversation, and especially a few certain people, but even the most vocal ones do want to hear from staff. They respect staff opinions and things. So just they need to hear them. So as much as you are able and feel comfortable, we really do appreciate when all the different constituencies speak up. So that is what I have. I'm happy to answer if there's any questions or comments that people have as well, or if there's other, those of you who are on the University Senate or have been before, if you have advice, we'd love to hear that as well.
This is Heidi. I'm new to the Senate, but thank you for being here as well, and just for explaining that. That was super helpful. I do have one little suggestion, which is about accessibility. So when you do the QR code and all of that, if you could also provide a Z-link, that would enhance accessibility for everyone to get to the form during those meetings.
Sure. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
I had one question. At the last Senate meeting, we were voting with our hands raised. And I knew when I checked in, there were people in front of me who weren't senators who checked in. And so I didn't track them or, check to see if they were voting. But I also feel like anyone who shows up could be voting, and that seemed like maybe a risk. And I wondered if there was something that is going to happen moving forward to only allow people who have a vote in the University Senate to vote.
Yeah, that's something we continue to think about. We were doing, the counted votes through Chime In is what we used last year in person. And then there was this movement to have everyone's vote be public. And so what we're trying to do is move away from the counted votes, or at least the kind that are recorded, counted and recorded. So for that Senate meeting, all of the votes that were on the docket were just like the minutes and things that were not consequential. So the plan was to do those by voice vote because whatever, the minutes are not going to be that controversial.
Mm.
Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know. As you know, some other votes came up that were not planned, and so we just didn't. We hadn't had a backup system for those. I may have wanted to do those by chime in. I'm not sure. But yeah, that point taken, and we are continuing to think about it.
I have a very low tech idea, which is maybe when people come in, if they're senators, they get a voting paddle. Like,
Yeah,
you know how when you go to an auction and you put your number up,
Yep.
instead of a number, you could just have, I don't know, something, a green circle.
we did used to do that when things were all in person, and we may end up having to go back to it. We've tried making people sit in the right area, that, you know, non-voting people sit in one area. There's no way to enforce that. Yeah, I don't know how that would work with the online people, but yes, all things are
Under consideration,
yes,
okay. I didn't want to
exactly.
I don't want to put you on the spot at all. I just wanted to, I think I just wanted to say that item. Thank you. And somebody had their hand up.
Yeah, I had my hand up, and it was that exact point that we used to do fine with checking in with an associate and getting your voting placard. I think it was color coded by which Senate you represent.
Yeah.
And I know there's been issues with non-senators speaking, like this is in the Zoom years, not non-senators speaking without being yielded to, and no one realizes they're not a senator. And I would like to see the placards again.
Yeah, I mean, point taken, where it's very different to run a huge hybrid meeting than it is to run a huge everyone's in person meeting. So yes, I appreciate the feedback, and we're thinking about it.
Any other questions for Amber? Great resource. Don't lose your opportunity.
I am also, you know, available by email. So if you think of something later, shoot me a note. That's totally fine.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming and giving us those tips and tricks. I probably need to know about getting in the queue right away. I feel like it's already filled up and it's like, well, now there's no point in putting my name in. So it's good to have that thought in mind. And the item that I forgot earlier was I just wanted to check to see if this is something you all we'll talk about this later. Never mind. We'll move on to our next item. I don't want to make Mary Roman Cool wait. Thank you so much for joining us. Mary is going to address our Office of Human Resources, Minnesota paid leave.
Yeah, thank you. I would have waited. I would be fine
Oh.
waiting.
We can
yeah.
hardly hear you.
Oh, let's see here. Let me come
That's
back
better.
and pull my presentation up. But let me just check my mic. How about now? Is this any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, I'll just speak up a little bit more. I would have waited. I'm always happy to kind of listen to the conversation. It's interesting. So, but I'm just going to pull my presentation up here. So my name is Mary Roman Cool. I know many of you super well, but for people that haven't met me, I'm the Senior Director of Total Rewards at the university. So I'm over compensation and benefits. I'm here today with Jamie Elder, who's our time away consultant in our benefits team. So we're here to talk to you about Minnesota paid leave. And I just want to say before we start, we sent you guys all these policies, like all these different policies we have today on leaves need to change to like it's a puzzle so they can all intertwine and connect to Minnesota paid leave. And if any of you have opened them, the redlining is just profound. I would say overwhelming. And so the main thing I want to say is a lot of the redlining is readability. We just looked at some of those policies. We're like, these are so disorganized. And so a lot of the edits are like readability, organization, trying to get them just set up so that people can make their way through them more efficiently. But today in this presentation, we're going to talk about kind of the more substantial changes, like the real change to these policies. So just wanted to alert people, if you looked in there and panicked seeing all the red line, most of it is like if you even take and move a paragraph up, the whole thing gets redlined. So anyway, just wanted to provide that. So Jamie and I were here to talk to you about Minnesota paid leave. It's going into effect on January 1, 2026. The program is administered by deed. And all Minnesota employees, with very, very few exceptions, are going to be eligible for this new leave. There's kind of different leave reasons that are covered by the program, and they kind of fall into two categories or kind of buckets. The first bucket really allows an employee to take up to 12 weeks of paid leave for their own serious health condition. But the other bucket gives 12 weeks for other types of leave: bonding, family care, safety, exigency, which is, kind of preparing if someone is going out for military leave in your family. And so in total, across those two buckets, in total, employees can take 20 weeks of paid leave, beginning now on January 1. And they can take that over a benefit year. And what a benefit year is a 12-month period that's unique to each person based on when you begin and end your leaves. So over a 12-month period that's unique to you, there'd be 20 weeks available. The thing that people need to know is the program offers partial wage replacement, and it's for leaves that are anticipated to go beyond 7 days. And so you'll get a portion of your normal wage, not the full amount, although we'll be topping those numbers off. So you actually probably will get your full amount, but through the state's program, you get a partial amount of your pay. And how it works is just like unemployment insurance. If you are like a higher wage earner, you'll get a smaller percentage of your pay. Lower wage earner, then more of the pay will be covered. So just like unemployment insurance. And the maximum you can get is $1,372, I believe. And that is the average weekly wage currently in the state of Minnesota. If people want to try to estimate their payment, you can go out onto the deed website, and there's a little calculator out there that you can try to see if you were to apply, what would the amount be. And we have a link to that on the OHR website too. We just know people would be interested in that. And then I kind of mentioned this already, but employers can choose if they want to provide employees with the option of topping off these calculated checks, like supplement or top them off with accrued time banks like sick time and so forth to make a person's check whole. And the university, we decided right away that yes, we want to allow our employees to top that off. So we'll be, essentially, your time will be fully paid if you choose to have it topped off. And it is an employee's choice. You can say, no, I don't want the top off, or yes, I do. And we'll be able to accommodate that request. So that's kind of like the basic 101, I guess, of what this program is. So then, boy, the state of Minnesota governs this benefit program, and there are so many rules that we need to follow to make sure that we're giving this thing out exactly as they intend, either meeting their requirements or exceeding their requirements. And even the Department of Commerce needs to audit our plan to make sure it's compliant, which is a good thing. And then there's certain areas that they let an employer decide, you can run it like this or that. You can choose this or that. And that's what we're here to talk about today, are the things that we were able to have choice on, what we're choosing. And then we really are interested in your thoughts and feedback on that. So with that, first I should pause. Let me go back. Is there any questions about the program itself? I just want to make sure any questions about it? We'll show you how it interacts with other leaves and all of that, but any questions on what it is? Okay. All right, great. All right. So then the first design decision that employers across the state of Minnesota had to grapple with is, do we run our program through the state of Minnesota, or do we provide our own program that we administer internally, maybe like through a third-party vendor too? And the university has decided that we want to administer our own program. And we're going to do that through MetLife. And we think there are so many benefits to employees of doing this, and I want to kind of walk you through that. So although we've made the choice to do our own program, I want to actually walk you through what it would look like had we offered this program through the state of Minnesota. So if we'd gone through the state, the process would be really similar to filing an unemployment insurance claim. So employees who would want to take a leave, you'd stop receiving the paychecks from the University of Minnesota. So you'd stop receiving checks from us, you file a claim with the state of Minnesota. And then you'd have to wait, kind of with like unemployment. There can be a little bit of a waiting period where they review the claim, confirm it looks accurate, and then calculate the payment. And then they issue you a payment from the state of Minnesota. You get a check from the state, and it would have this dollar amount that's, based on their formula. And then after that, the university, we do want to top off the checks. So we would then need to top off checks with any unearned or earned sick time, balances like vacation to keep your pay whole. So that would require that the state would send their files to us. So we have to wait, receive the files to know what they paid a person. And then we would need to run our calculations and issue a second check through the University of Minnesota. And time would have passed by now. So we felt that would leave people really confused on which top off went with which state check. But more importantly, and this was a big decision point on our part, the university would no longer have a check from which to take benefit deductions. So we would need to bill our employees directly, like send you a bill at your home for your health insurance premiums, and you would have to return that bill and pay us. And this could be at a time when a person is on a medical leave for self, where they are not, they're not on top of their meal. They're not watching things like that, or able to even. So we really, we did not like that feeling. And we also wouldn't be able to make contributions to MSRS or retirement plans. And we know that those are leading benefits for our employees, and we just almost couldn't, we did not like that. So we said, we really want to go through our own plan, and we want to go through MetLife. And so now I'll show you what that looks like in contrast. So by going through MetLife, we will have one location for integrated leave management, and that's because MetLife is currently our vendor for voluntary short-term disability, long-term disability, and academic medical leave. And then as of 1/1, they're going to start tracking parental leave too, and parental leave and unpaid family medical leave. So they'll start tracking those too as of 1/1, because they have to coordinate with Minnesota paid leave. So what will happen, MetLife will do the calculation instead of the state. It'll be exactly the same formula, exact same number will come out of that calc, but they'll hand it to, send it over to the U of M before a check is issued. They'll send it to us. We'll perform all the top off calculations, and then we'll issue one single check to employees that includes their benefit deductions, the contributions to retirement, and all of that. And it will come out on the same date that you would have normally received your paycheck. So from an employee experience moment, we just felt like we need to run our own plan. A little bit better news here. We got a rate through MetLife of 0.75% of payroll for this program. The state was going to charge us 0.88%. And the state has signaled that they feel those rates are probably going to have to go up after year one. They've talked about a number as high as 0.96, 1.0, and our rate with MetLife is guaranteed for 3 years. So just, that's just an extra plus, I guess. Any questions about the state versus MetLife? I think this is a real positive for people. But any questions before I go to the next item? Yeah, Rosemary.
So here's my question. It's not one plan versus the other. It's more like, if the payout amount from the state is $1,000, I'm just gonna say, and my weekly pay is $2,000. So that top off amount of $1,000 would be like getting 50% pay during the time that I'm out. So it would come from my sick time or my vacation time or my personal or comp time, right? I mean, that's how that would
So-
be worked.
Sort of, but we have a little bit later. So you know how we've got like parental leave. Let's say you went out for the birth of a child and we've got parental leave, right? So parental leave, we'll talk about this in a minute. It is going to run, it's coordinated to run with this Minnesota paid leave. So, you know, you would have had like 6 weeks of time that you'd use for parental leave. That also can be a top off. So it runs with it. And so many times you won't have to tap into your banks, like your sick, your vacation. You won't have to tap into those for a lot of things that are programs we already offer. And that's the same with other Minnesota employers too. The programs, we'll get into it a little bit later, it gets complicated. So there's a lot of your times that the top off are our benefits that we offer. And then there's times when it becomes like supplementing with sick and vacation. Yeah. So I think for the most part, Jamie will show you a picture at the very end where for the most part, employees will get full pay for these 20 weeks. And she's got an example where in the old world, like what we're doing now, a person gets about 12 weeks. But with the new world, a person will get 18, and those are all fully paid. So yeah. Ray.
So is there anything in this, like looking between the state and the way you're looking at doing it for the university, the person's still considered to be fully employed? They're not, it's not a leave of absence or gap in service. I can see there'd be the challenge with the retirement side that MSRS would look at it as a gap in service. So that's obviously a of advantage, right? But is there anything within the university side in terms of, because we have things that affect us based on continuous years of service? and things
Yes.
like that. So
My understanding is it's not a break in service at all. And Jamie, do you have, I mean, you're more close to it than I, but any comment on that? Or we can take that, Ray, too, and just absolutely confirm the answer on that. But
Yeah,
it's
no,
never
it's
been my
you're
understanding.
yep, you're correct, Mary, in
Thank
what
you.
you said.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions about kind of doing this through MetLife?
With the 0.75% of taxable wages, do you have how
Yeah.
that will be split between the university and employees?
Okay, here we go. Next slide. Let's go right into it. The second, sorry, I've just got to get my details here. I just lost I had some key points for this. The second slide is about the premiums. So the state of Minnesota, it requires employees cover at least half. So of the premiums, we got to cover half. And then the other half, the 0.44%, can be covered by employees. And so at the university, we are going to follow the practice. We've talked to over 60 companies in the Twin Cities, the big employers that you can kind of think of as those big Minnesota employers and smaller ones too. We've talked to tons of employers, and we're going to follow the almost universal practice. Out of the whole group, we found one who's not splitting premiums, but we're going to follow the practice of everyone else and also the practice of our Big 10 peers who are located in states that already have these programs. And we're going to split the premiums 50-50 with employees. And what that means is that you and other employees, again, at really practically every company across the state of Minnesota, will see that new premium or tax appear on your first paycheck that's issued after January 1st. And the premium is just like unemployment insurance. Again, I keep bringing that up, but it is very similar, that it's taken out of the checks of all people, every paycheck, regardless if you use the program or not, just like unemployment. The university, when we looked at our savings with MetLife, we immediately said, we know we can pass the 0.44, but we want to share that savings. We felt the negotiating savings should be split also with our employees. So the contribution from our employees will be 0.375%, rather than the 0.44. So it's a little bit lower. And for someone that earns $50,000 a year, that's about $7 a paycheck. $100,000 a year, about $14 a paycheck. questions about that, that's perfect, Katie. Those are kind of the two larger kind of first things we had to decide. The rest of what Jamie and I are going to talk about is how this program coordinates with all of our different leave programs. It's basically the policies you got prior to the meeting. That's what the rest of our presentation is about. Ray.
I guess that's exactly what kind of where my question was kind of gonna go, is how this would interact with short-term or long-term disability. I would say if I was a P&A employee, I would probably have many more questions in that regard in terms of how they're done through policy, but sounds like that's what you're looking to address next
Yep,
anyway.
that's next. You guys are hitting all the points. Anything about the premium split, or again, open to anything going through MetLife? Okay, let's get into let's get into the policy changes and how this interacts. Because all the remaining design decisions is how Minnesota paid leave coordinates with the 4 other types of leave that the university offers. So this can be FMLA, parental leave, academic paid medical and disability, which is a P&A thing, and then earn sick and save. So the policies, we shared all those policies with you. We want you to know that we'll talk here today, but then we'll take feedback through November 1st. So, call us if you have questions. Jamie and I are I think very approachable. We'd love to hear from you. We want your feedback. And then, so yeah, these are the more meaningful design changes. And then we'll walk through each one. At the end, we do have a couple pictures, like a picture that really helps kind of show an example that we've heard people kind of like. So we'll start with FMLA. Okay, FMLA, this is kind of like a recap, all these acronyms and so forth, but FMLA is a federal leave program. And this is the one that gives you 12 weeks of pay, but it's unpaid. It's unpaid time. So 12 weeks of leave, I should say, that's unpaid, and it's job protected. FMLA runs concurrently with Minnesota paid leave. So they'll run at the same time. One is a federal program, unpaid job protection. This one's 20 weeks, paid time. So effective 1/1/26, the university is actually going to give employees a brand new full 12-week FMLA balance. And that's regardless if an employee used FMLA time in 2025. Normally that wouldn't be the case, but 1/1/26 for this transition, everyone will just get a fresh new account with 12 weeks. And then we're going to start tracking FMLA on a rolling 12-month benefit period that's unique to each employee. So it coordinates with each person's Minnesota paid leave benefit period. Previously, we had a practice of tracking that time over our fiscal year. But with this, to make it all work together, we're transitioning and we're just giving people that new bank. So it represents no change to the FMLA time that's provided to people, other than that one time, you could kind of call it a one-time advantage where the new full balances are being provided on 1/1/26. And in the policy that you guys got to look through, a lot of the redlining is just cleanup, clarifying things. We did try to make the reading level much more approachable on all of our policies when we renew them. So a lot of the redlining are those kinds of things. The main thing this is saying is we're moving from a fiscal year to a unique year based on each person's use. Any questions about this?
I do have a question. I was just curious how this would work with something like intermittent or reduced schedule FMLA.
Jamie, would you be able to field that one?
Yes. So your use of intermittent will remain the same with FMLA, and the use of Minnesota paid leave can also run intermittently. So they would run in conjunction with each other. Is that answering your question?
It kind of does answer my question. I just wanted to know if intermittent or reduced schedule FMLA would then be paid time while people are away.
It would if it's, a covered reason to be out by Minnesota paid leave. Yes, then it would.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for knowing that. That's wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions about, so this is one of the 4 policies that you guys got, was the FEMLA. That's the change. That's the big change to FEMLA. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Jamie, and she's going to talk to you next about parental leave.
Yes, thanks, Mary. The university currently provides 6 weeks of fully paid leave for parental leave. And once again, we'll be following the most universal practice of other Minnesota employers, and we'll be running this leave concurrently with Minnesota paid leave, which is allowed by the state. Many employers we have found are either sunsetting or discontinuing their parental leave policy, but we are going to keep our policy in place and just state that it runs concurrently as a supplement with Minnesota paid leave. So what that means is when we say it runs concurrently as a supplement, we are saying that if you're going to be out on parental leave, you would get the calculated payment for Minnesota paid leave for those 6 weeks. And then that payment would be topped off with parental leave to provide you with 100% of your normal biweekly pay.
That was Rosemary, that comment you had, like, do I have to then click into sick time? Or, no, it's, some of this is a little bit duplicative, but it'll just like supplement and carry you through to have that full pay. Mm-hmm.
And if there is not another leave running concurrently, Rosemary, to your point, though, you can use your sick and your vacation as well. Hannah.
This is a heavy question, but in the event of a stillbirth, how does parental leave work? This has been a issue that has come up for a number of people in the past few years.
Yeah.
So our current practice, is that what you're referring to? Like how parental leave will work or works, or are you asking about Minnesota paid leave?
Both.
Okay. So for Minnesota paid leave, I believe that it would be a reason to be out, and then the length of time would be based on like the medical documentation as well, or the documentation that is received. But for the parental leave currently, I'm going to take that as a takeaway. I'm not exactly sure how we're currently handling that specific situation.
And
but
we
I'm
know too, from the feedback from you guys, experience that an employee had last year, like we'll get the answer for that, make sure we've got that really well addressed, because we know there's some sensitivity there, and rightfully so. So yeah,
and I might even be able to get that answer before the end of our call.
Oh, that'd be great, Jane.
And if not, then I will follow up with you, Hannah, for sure. But either way, I'm taking that as a takeaway and hoping that maybe I can get an answer before.
Yeah,
and
if that can be clearly spelled out anywhere as we update policies, that would also be very beneficial.
That's
okay,
good.
I will actually note that as feedback too, as we're kind of finalizing, because while the policies are, we did send them to you, we're asking for edits and feedback. So that's a great one if you wanted to provide that as well. So we have that documented.
Will do.
That would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Otherwise, I'll forward the slide for Jamie.
And then the next one, I won't spend a ton of time here, but I did want to just make a note of it as well, that we do offer the paid medical, the academic medical leave and disability to P&A employees, and that will be changing as well in the fact that it will be running concurrently with Minnesota paid leave. And we also are going to be breaking that into 2 different policies. Currently, it's one. We're going to have a policy for medical self, and then one for family.
That policy was so complicated that when our team, and we're all benefit professionals, and when we read through it, we're like, we can barely find our way through that policy. So we broke it into 2. It looks, again, those red lines, it just looks like we blew it up, but it's all there. We just broke it into 2 separate policies. So now, if you were going to take a leave for family, you could go, and we know that this is for P&A, but it's still nice, I think, to share the information with you all that if you want to go take a leave for family as a P&A employee, you can go to that policy, versus if you're doing it for medical self, you take this policy. And there's different information there that it just got very complicated when it was all merged together. Ray?
So, and maybe you will cover this, but it wasn't in the 4 things that you were addressing directly. And that's kind of for civil service employees that actually elect to have short-term disability insurance, how this plays into things like when you have run out of vacation and sick leave? Is
Yeah,
that,
that's a great, yep, no, that's a great question. For the voluntary STD benefits, we would not offset your Minnesota paid leave. So that would continue to run how it does now with when you're out. And it would not be offset by the Minnesota paid leave for that voluntary disability.
So people may want to still, like, we had a question of, well, does this mean that you don't need to even enroll like for voluntary short-term disability any longer? Does that have any value any longer? It does. It's still a program that will, you know, provide benefit to people if they're out. So we'll have communications too for employees to consider. Open enrollment will be occurring before people have like deeper knowledge, but short-term disability is one of those programs that you can go in and out of. So we'll have a nice communication campaign that talks about the use of that and how it is integrated. And then people can say, oh, I'm so glad I signed up, or gee, I wish I'd signed up, or, you know, I signed up, I don't want to be signed up, and they can take action, you know, at that point.
And then I wanted to see a question about, there was a question in the chat from Hannah. I think, let me just go to that, about how it currently is, it's on top of your current leaves. And that is exactly how it will continue to work, Hannah, the voluntary STD. It will not be offset or anything like that by the policies. Did that answer that question, Hannah?
Yes, I was just.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to make sure that I was clear because I said an offset, and I just wanted to make sure that yes, it'll run exactly how it is currently running. So whatever you're getting from Minnesota paid leave or other leaves, and then they will get the voluntary STD on top of that.
And we will be doing, we'll talk about this later, but in November, we'll be out with so much more information. Like, people care about, like, what about this instance? What about this type of thing? That really, that'll be after we get the policy in place, we'll have just a massive communication effort so people really understand how that works. Okay.
Perfect. And then the next slide we're going to talk about is related to earned sick and safe time. And this is probably going to be one of the bigger changes. So I'm going to go through the information that I have here, but then I'm going to pause and let you all read it. And I'm going to let you ask any questions that you might have. And so again, this is regarding the earned sick and safe time law that was put into place in January of 2024. This law was recently updated in July of this past summer. And with that update, the state clarified rules related to ESST. Saying that all time banks that can be used for sick time need to be made available for ESST leave purposes. For the university, this means that our sick banks provided to civil service and labor represented employees, and then the first 10 days of our academic medical leave for PNA employees needs to be made available for ESST leave purposes. So that means that any leave that you could take for ESST, now you can use your sick for those leaves. As an example we often see is like for kids' school closure, now you'd be able to use your sick time for that as well. Had this rule been in place when ESST was originally mandated, we wouldn't have set up separate ESST banks for benefit eligible employees, because our existing sick banks and academic medical leave time essentially already met the state requirements. So because of this new information, we will rename our current sick banks to indicate they are also usable for safe time reasons. And then the big change noted here is that on January 1st of 2026, our accruals will cease or stop accruing in our separate ESST banks for all non-union employees who are benefit eligible. Employees will then have 1 year to use down that time bank for ESST purposes, which would bring us to January 1st of 2027. And if the time has not been used by that date, any remaining time would be forfeited.
And I'll just add to that, we do realize some people will say, hey, that's a takeaway. We're hoping that there's many other things we've talked about today that demonstrate, you know, the positive, something a little bit better sometimes than what other Minnesota employers are doing, or, you know, upsides that we're building into this. So we realize this one is a little bit more on the negative side, but we also too, I think, Jamie, Rosemary's got a question, but I think it's good to walk through this picture too before we take any questions on this, because this picture I think is somewhat helpful.
Yeah, will you, yeah, perfect, to the civil service one, yes. Do you want, Rosemary, I can answer your question first if you'd like me to,
It's
though.
just a quick question.
Sure.
So the accrual now is like, I don't know what generally people earn, but let's just say 4 hours, a pay period for sick time. And then there's that bit that you get from ESST.
Yeah.
And so will we now revert to the 4 hours and not have that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And,
Your sick bank accrual would not change in rate.
all right, now I have a
Yep.
question that is a little bit different. Does this also apply to labor represented, or are they going to continue to have ESST?
Yeah.
They will,
it's
oh, Mary, if
not
you want
yet.
to, yep,
Yep.
perfect.
Not yet. So for our labor represented employees, that would have to be bargained. Yep. And also we have employees that are not benefit eligible, so they don't have sick banks. And well, now we'll probably call them sick and safe banks. They don't have our sick and safe banks, and they don't get academic disability. They'll still have banks. They'll have an ESST bank, and that's accruing at a slower rate because they're probably working 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week. So it's a smaller bank, but we need to keep the banks for them. And we do need to negotiate any removal of banks with union. Yeah. Let's quickly finish this slide. This slide, we kind of thought this slide was a helpful slide, and then we'll take Ray's and Hannah's question.
Perfect. Okay. So we realize that this is a departure from how we first structured ESST, and like Mary mentioned, could be viewed as a takeaway. But this chart is trying to illustrate just how employees will now have more time for ESST purposes by first allowing 1 year to use down that accrued ESST time. In column for 2026, you can kind of see how that's shown there. So we're getting that 1 year to use down that accrued time, and then we're going to be expanding the use of sick time to include all ESST reasons. So I think I mentioned an example of snow days. Now you can use your sick and safe bank for reasons like such as that. And then in addition to that, we wanted to note here the Minnesota paid leave, because now we're going to be having 20 weeks of Minnesota paid leave, which covers many ESST leave reasons as well, as long as that period of time away from work is anticipated to be longer than 7 days. So you can see in 2026, we're showing here that spend down and then the expanded use along with Minnesota paid leave. And then starting in 2027, when that bank has either been spent or has been forfeited, then now you would have that sick and safe bank expanded use and Minnesota paid leave for many of those same ESST reasons. And then one thing to note here, I think Mary mostly touched on this, but we won't have the tradition, since ESST eligible employees who do not have traditional sick or academic medical leave, they will continue to accrue ESST and are not impacted by this change. This includes like temporary and casual employees, student workers, and then professionals in training. So I will pause there and we can open it up for questions.
Ray?
Okay, so along the lines of the union contract stuff and everything, all of the language regarding use of sick leave and everything is in the civil service rules, which is our contract. So this needs to be modified as well.
Oh, good point. So,
Because we modified it to bring
yes.
in all the earned sick and safe time when that was implemented. So all of the language regarding
The earned sick and
sick
safe
and all
time
that.
language though didn't get brought in, but the
The
earned sick and
Minnesota earned sick and safe time were explicitly brought into the civil service rules.
I thought it just referred to the policy.
I think it
No.
just referred to the policy. It's in Rule 11. Let me check here. But I think that we did work with you to just refer to the policy instead of.
Yes, but one thing that you raised, Ray, that's a really good point. We need to talk in the civil service rules. Do we need to say in the civil service rules then that sick bank is now usable for sick and safe?
I think
Like
it needs to be clarified.
I do too. Yeah. Yeah. We'll take that as a note as well, but I suppose that will be a note, even more importantly, that you guys, right? I think you all kind of start the process of those restatements, That will be important.
And we do, and we're in the midst of a process right now for getting this done for changes to meet some federal requirements in Title IX. And that's our deadline is running up against December. So your time of implementation and our ability
That
to
works.
change the rules, well, the documents have already been put out. So I can't comment to that directly. We're already in the process of coming up on public hearing. for
Okay.
changes. So
Thank you for catching that.
Hannah.
Just clarification on who keeps their ESST bank. So you have your undergrad students, the temp casuals, professionals in training. Do professional and trainings also include the medical residents and fellows?
It would be anyone, and maybe someone knows the exact answer to that specific group, but it's going to be anyone that's not benefit eligible that would still be ESST eligible. So if those employees would not receive STIC or
University.
academic.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then does that also include then the grad students because they're not university employee eligible?
The grad students.
Or is that going to have to be worked into a future contract with
Do
them?
you have that information, Jamie? Or maybe we
I
can get
don't.
that?
So this is one of the ones that we've been trying to finalize for the grad students because it has been brought up before, Hannah. So it's definitely something that we're working on, but I don't have the exact answer yet. But they're on. I mean, they're a group that we are aware of, and we're working through to make sure it can answer that question though.
Okay. And then one more question. With the ESST balances going away at the end of 2026, has there been any talk about for civil service that maybe those leftover balances would roll into sick time balances?
They would not. So,
yeah.
Sorry, Mary,
No,
go
you
ahead.
Go ahead, Jamie. You're doing great. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So no, they would not. They would have to be used, or the balance would actually would go away. It wouldn't be moved to their other bank.
Okay. And any specific reason for that?
I think because we're giving that full year to use it all as it is. So I think that was just the decision. And Mary, maybe you can speak to more of that too. But it was more just because they're going to have that. We're going to give them that whole year to use it, and they're not going to be accruing anymore. So they would have that time frame to use that bank.
The other thing too is ESST was never designed to be a benefit that was payable upon termination. So you know how like some.
Yeah, sick time isn't either.
Right. But I think it can be converted, correct? It can be converted for. So ESST was never intended to be like that type of I'll say like conversion or payable type of item. And so we really felt the right thing to do would be to give people a year. So that was kind of our bridge, was like we could take it down on 1/1, but let's not do that. Let's do 1/1/27. People can use it down. So kind of using the benefit, using it up as much as you're able or interested in doing so. And then it would just be closed down on 1/1/27.
Okay. And then point of clarification, and Jess, you can go next with your question. Does the ESST accrual stop 1/1/2026?
Good question. They do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yep. So it'll stop on January 1st of 2026, and then you have from the rest of 2026 to use that time in that bank.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for all the great questions, Jessica.
So ESST has those expanded definitions on who that time can be used for in
Correct.
comparison to civil service rules. So will those civil service rules be updated and expanded to include those additional definitions?
Yeah, I believe they should be. Mhm.
Yeah, we'll have to look at how it's, yes, but that is, I believe it would have to be as well.
Okay, yeah, because it's a lot more limited in comparison to the
It is,
ESST.
and that was the reason, to your point, that's originally why we had one of the reasons we had the separate ones. But now because the state is saying that sick bank has to also be made eligible for those same reasons, that's kind of the catalyst for some of these decisions.
Great. And then one other question. So usually the documentation portion is a little bit different between the civil service sick rules and the ESST. When people have like extended absences, will that continue, that we can request absences or documentation for those absences?
That's actually a great question. I'll have to look at the differences to see. Do you know, I guess the question will be, is ESSTs like more advantageous, or how, like, what would be the difference? I guess maybe I'll take that as a takeaway and I can go compare and see, but that's another point that yes, we would have to update those if we need to. Yeah, if they're different.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
So I think one comment on the rules change, since the bank is staying in place until the end of the year, and we refer to the policy, which is a link in the document, if that doesn't change, that the rules we need to look carefully at all the wording changes, but I don't think we're pressing by the begin date, because the reference to the ESST bank and stuff that you're still preserving for the year still holds relevance in the rules without change, I think. So
Okay, so we
I
might
don't think
potentially
it's-
have
I don't think we're as pressed to change it before the implementation, because I don't think there's anything that's conflicting directly with what you're saying, but that we'll have to take that to the rule side to discuss that. But so the implication of, so for a new employee that has not accrued any sick time, this new benefit actually allows them the ability to have time for various different things that they wouldn't have, correct? So it is an added benefit.
You mean
So
the Sick and Safe Bank, the new the renamed Sick and Safe Bank, do you mean?
Well, the new allowance for paid leave.
So for Minnesota paid leave, are you referring to?
Yes.
Not yes. Okay, so
Yes.
sorry. I just want to make sure I understood. So Minnesota paid leave, yes. So Minnesota paid leave has their own set of like requirements and rules. And so it's not exactly the same as ESST. They don't have to, that's not one of the banks that had to make available to those same uses. But Minnesota paid leave has a very expansive list of reasons you can use it. And
Yeah.
many of them are ESST. So that is correct. A new employee would have that Minnesota paid leave.
Yeah.
One thing to note, they have that as date of hire, but one thing to note is that the job protection part of the Minnesota paid leave does not go into effect till 90 days.
Okay. And what is it for FMLA? The job.
That's a great question. And I should know the answer to that. Let me see if I can get that answer for you too. Before the end of the call. Oh, perfect.
Jamie,
Hey, Lauren.
Yeah, I got it. So it's 1,250 hours in the previous 12 months from your date of leave, plus you have to be there for over a year.
So FMLA is a year. So if you're a brand new
Yep.
hire with the university, it's 1 year versus Minnesota paid is 90 days.
Yep.
Helpful.
I couldn't remember the hours requirement, so I appreciate that, Lauren. I don't want to misspeak there. Thank you. Ray, did that answer all of your questions?
Yeah, I mean, it raises
Okay.
the questions we need to.
Yes.
discuss in
The
rule.
ones that I can answer today anyway. Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Samantha.
Hi, good morning. Just one quick comment. I think for a visual representation, it might be a little bit helpful for 2026, that gray ESST bank spend down. If that were maybe a little bit smaller, just knowing it won't be accruing. And then for 2027, the sick and safe bank expanded use. Well, the use is expanded. I feel like it's a little bit inaccurate that box is as large as the total ESST bank and sick bank for 2025, just knowing that the accrual is actually less. So maybe just a couple.
Perfect. We will definitely take that feedback. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. If there isn't any other questions, I can go on to our next slide. And it is actually yes. So if you want to go to the next one, Mary.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Thank you. So this is how we talked about at the very beginning. We said we were going to have a visual illustration of how leaves could be used. And so we are choosing here, we're showing just one example, but we are choosing to show you an example using a birth parent because it is one of the few examples when an employee will tap into both buckets of Minnesota paid leave, both the 12 weeks for medical self and the 12 weeks for family due to bonding. So this chart here is going to show how Minnesota paid leave will run concurrently with FMLA parental leave, and then can be supplemented with vacation and sick leave. One thing to note here, we did not include voluntary STD because it is voluntary, not everyone has it. So we wanted to have a representation of what, you know, most employees would have available to them. And I know we already talked about that, but I just wanted to point that out so that if you're looking for it on the screen, your understanding is why it's not there. So as you can see in the first 6 weeks, will be taken as Minnesota paid leave for medical self. The employee will get that initial payment via Minnesota paid leave, which can be topped off with any available sick time. And this would provide the employee then with 100% of full pay for those first 6 weeks. For weeks 7 through 12, the employees will be getting Minnesota paid leave for family for bonding purposes, which they can choose to have topped off with parental leave for 100% of their pay. So weeks 7 through 12, it's the top yellow and the lower blue arrow there. And you can see that the parental leave runs the full 6 weeks like it does currently. And then for weeks 13 through 18, the employee will continue to get that Minnesota paid leave for family bonding, as well as being able to choose to top off with any accrued vacation time. If they had more sick that they wanted to use, they could also use that too. This is just one example, but in this example, the employee would be receiving full pay for 18 weeks. So with the implementation of Minnesota paid leave, this employee will now receive 18 weeks of benefits. And, you know, previously, while if they had different vacation or sick time, it may not be, you know, it could be differing, but previously we were getting about 12 weeks prior to the Minnesota paid leave. So I'll pause there because I want to see if there's any questions related to how they're running concurrently or questions on the supplemental time that's being used. Samantha, I see your hand up. I wasn't sure if it was still up or if it was up from last time. Okay, I can move on to Ray. I think you also have a question.
So in this scenario where everything is covered and has a paid component of it, does FMLA really have much effect here other than the counter started and you used it? It's just the job protection piece?
It's the job protection piece. You're correct, but we're getting that through Minnesota paid leave. But the statute for the Minnesota paid leave does say that FMLA must run concurrently. So it's just they're kind of showing that. But you're right, as far as like a functional piece, you're getting the job protection from Minnesota paid leave for the medical and the family piece as well as FMLA.
Okay.
Let me see. I'm sorry, I minimized my screen. Hannah.
Can you clarify a little bit the sick time supplemental and the Minnesota paid leave? So if you're using, I guess I'm not sure how you're using your sick time to supplement to full pay, but are you like spending down like a full day of sick time as
you're not.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would be like, I guess the word that's been used by the state is called topping off essentially. So basically, whatever the Minnesota paid leave is going to pay you, if they pay you 60% of your pay, then the 40% would be used with your sick time, whatever that comes to. If it's, you know, like 3.5 hours a day, you know, or whatever that math ends up being, that's what you would be using. But that's a great question to clarify. And the same with the vacation.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be using, you wouldn't have to use 8 hours there for those. Yeah.
Perfect. Just for future presentations, when you're talking about the topping off initially, if you could also maybe spin in like it's a prorated amount and then maybe come back on like this slide and explain it again.
Explain it. Perfect. That's good. Yes. This is great feedback for us.
Yeah. I'm HR, so I've dealt with the employees before. So
we appreciate that. We appreciate that.
You know,
and the same slide for P&A would be interesting as well.
Yeah, we actually have that. If you want, I mean, we do have that in this presentation as well. I just went to, but the only difference here is that instead of using the sick time, because they don't have that sick time, they have the academic medical leave. So that's the only difference here.
Okay.
Yep. Otherwise, and again, and I'll note this when we move to the next slide a little bit too, but like we realize that this is one scenario. And the reason we picked this one is because of, you know, using both buckets of Minnesota paid leave. We wanted to show you how they would work together. But we understand that there's a multitude of possible leave situations and scenarios. And so we do have many resources available to help you understand how the coordination will occur for any leaves that you may be eligible for. The university's OHR website's paid leave landing page has been updated with resources, including the calculator that Mary mentioned, as well as some additional frequently asked questions. Additionally, employees are going to be receiving a notice in MyU, either late November or very early December, and it's going to have information on paid leave and information about the payment, like the splitting the premiums as well. And then the last piece is that the updated leave policies will be posted in November or December, and that'll be all before the Minnesota paid leave begins on January 1st. Hannah.
While this is an amazing benefit overall for employees, it truly is, it's also incredibly complicated for your average employee to understand. So this might be more of a question for Lauren, but when employees file for leave of absence, will their leave team representative be reaching out to them and scheduling a one-on-one meeting to walk through their very specific scenario with them versus just kind of throwing them the policy, telling them, hey, look at it, let me know what you want to do? Because I think we're going to need more hand-holding than currently exist.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And so we actually have brought this up to MetLife as well. So just to kind of walk through, the employee will actually contact MetLife. And now that MetLife is going to be handling FMLA and parental leave tracking as well, MetLife would then tell them what they're eligible for, and how the leaves would run that way. But our leave admin team will still be very, involved and can help answer any of those questions. And if they have questions between now and then, that's who they can reach out to. As far as like getting a reach out call, it would be so the employee's responsibility to contact, MetLife to start that process. But then, they can ask for additional, help or guidance at that point.
And again, we're so happy to have MetLife as our partner in this, because we just, again, couldn't imagine, the state does wonderful things, but we did not want our employees having to be in queue with the state. We wanted our team through MetLife, where we've got a contract, and if we don't get the service, levels that we need, we can be tough on that. We can negotiate that, so we have a lot more control over the care that employees get, both through MetLife and our leave team. We're going to have kind of a dual powerhouse that people are able to have those questions answered and the whole leave experience kind of sketched out for them. It is going to be very complicated. Yeah, it's a lot of change. And just, it's, again, like I said at the beginning, like a puzzle. It really has been a puzzle to figure out how the pieces fit together. And let's go to the last slide, because Jane, you've got that comment too about people that have had a baby in 2025 too.
Yes. So there are a couple things that employees should be aware of now. And one of those is that if an employee had a baby in 2025, they may be eligible for additional time off in 2026. And this is because employees have up to 12 months from the birth or adoption of a child to use their Minnesota paid leave for bonding time. So that would mean anyone that had a baby could potentially get up to the 12 weeks in 2026. One thing to note though is and we have examples of this on our OHR website, but if they had the baby in January of 2025, then they only have until the date of birth to use any of that bonding time. But there's more information on that OHR website, including examples of this as well. And then general leave information about the state program can be found on the Minnesota DEED website. They have some great frequently asked questions sections there, and they are updating those pretty regularly. So they have an employer section and an employee section. And from the benefits team, we have used both pretty greatly to help us answer, a lot of the questions that we're getting as well. So if you do have questions, sometimes that's a great place to start, because sometimes they've already clarified them for us. And so I recommend anyone that has questions sometimes to start with the Minnesota DEED website. And then an employee, like I mentioned, can initiate a Minnesota paid leave by contacting MetLife as of January 1st. So they won't have, they won't know what anyone's eligible for until we start sending that data as of January 1st. So that's when they would start contacting them.
And again, we'll come up with employees in November with just, employees will just get so much more information too about this change and where they go and how it will work. Yeah.
And then the last thing here is, as I've mentioned a few times, but visiting that UMN Minnesota paid leave landing page on the OHR website for more information. We are pretty regularly updating that as we get more information and clarification from the state. And then also based on the questions that we're getting, we're trying to make sure that it's available on that site. And then Mary also mentioned we are working on our Minnesota paid leave policy as well. And so we will have that available as soon as possible. We're just kind of finalizing that. So that'll have some additional information. And it'll probably have answers to some of the questions that have been asked today too. So we're hoping you can use that as a good resource as well.
And we'll get that out to all of you for the feedback and input too. And we'll make sure you've got a good week with that before November 1st. It's just, we're just putting the finishing touches on it. It didn't come through with the other ones. And so just, you know, a matter of days here and we'll have that out to you too.
And then that is actually the end of the presentation. So I would love to open it up for any more questions. I know we've taken them throughout too, but you know, as you've seen everything kind of come together here, if there's any additional questions.
I just want to ask a general simplification question. In practice, would an employee, someone who comes to me with this question, I just want to be able to guide them. Would an employee go work with their HR partner? Would that be the first step in any of these leaves?
Yes. And so we actually presented the same information to the HR leads as well. So yes, they would be a great resource to start with. And then they can either come to, you know, Mary or I and Total Rewards. They can come to Lauren's team as well. I know she works a lot with the HR leads with any questions, but I think that's a great first step with the understanding that, you know, there's a lot of questions that we still are clarifying with the state as well as more information comes out. So we don't always know them right offhand. But yes, I think the HR leads would be a great starting point to ask your questions.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just want to be able to give people a place to go because
Yeah, no, that's a great
it is
question.
a little confusing and I think there's someone with a commercial that has a decomplicator. I'm going to think of HR as maybe our personal decomplicator.
love
Yes,
that.
I would agree with that.
You know, one other place too that I mean, I have an opinion too on another place people could go for questions. We have our OHR contact center. If people submit a question through them, it gets I know people think, oh, a ticket. There's benefits to tickets. It gets a ticket and it will probably go to Jamie or Lauren. And because it's ticketed, we get themes. We'd be like, oh, we're getting like 50 questions on this one thing. Then we know we need to do better communication because we're getting too many questions on that topic. My thought would be the best spot would probably be the OHR contact center. So it gets the ticket, it'll go right through to someone same day. And then we'll respond and the response is also captured. So that's a pretty good place to go. And some of our HR leads too, we've not had a chance to train them thoroughly. We'll be doing that in the next coming like 2-3 weeks. And so they may be a little bit less ready in the next 2 to 3 weeks to handle questions, but they will be, you know, fully able to do that shortly. But if you've got something between now and the next week or two, I'd go HR contact center. Hey, Ray?
Me again. So, question from the Rules Committee perspective, just to accelerate the discussion here, who should we be discussing with in HR as to looking at our language and?
Well, I think you could just contact me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we could work together. We've done that before and that worked great with me.
All right.
Sarah.
Thanks for doing this. This is complicated, but I know a lot of work has went into this. So thank you. I want to make sure I'm preparing myself to fully understand and answer questions around the ESST change. And I don't think I'm there yet. So if I could back up for a second. The ESST is going to essentially roll in the right term to our sick bank.
I would probably state it differently. The way I would state it is the ESST bank, the accruals will stop. It'll stay separate. And the ESST bank, the accruals will stop on 1/1/26. But the time will stay there.
Okay.
So,
so let's say you have
hours.
zero. You have zero in
Zero.
2026. Let's say you've spent it all in 2025. So my choices are in January 15th, I have a doctor appointment to use my sick bank, which I originally always had. And in this example, feel like that's where the takeaway that you mentioned is going to be felt because I'm not going to have that bank there anymore, right? For some people, this will be 2027. So help me understand how to explain that the use of the sick bank coupled with Minnesota paid leave is not a takeaway. I'm looking for the best possible explanation since there's
Yeah.
a 7-day gap before I can
Well,
utilize Minnesota paid leave.
yeah. So
Does that make
I
sense?
I saw Lauren in the Lauren, did you and no is a totally fine answer. Did you want to jump in, Lauren, for that question or no? I didn't want to put you on the spot, but
I totally can, but I was answering another question.
oh,
So
you were. I
Sarah,
thought you
can
were.
you just, I caught most of it. Can you just
Yep.
reiterate what your exact question is?
Yes, I understand completely. So you are a busy gal in the chat. I see that.
No, that's okay.
So
You were talking about
let's
something about the gap. So basically,
ESST.
like,
Yep. So let's say 2026, I go into not zero. I've spent all my ESST in
Yep.
2025. In 2026, I'm not accruing anymore ESST. So essentially, I have $0, right? And I have to go back to using my sick bank.
Yep.
Which is what we've always done before ESST, but that's where it feels like a takeaway, right? Because I don't have a bank
Sure.
there anymore.
Yep.
How do I talk to people about using their sick bank again minus the ESST? Is the amount that would otherwise be in ESST in our sick bank for those first 7 days? So my question there, and I'm talking this through, does my sick bank accrual change at all?
No.
Okay.
So you're not going to receive additional accruals. I do want to also note though that there is a 7-day, and maybe, you know what, I'm realizing now that I should use different language. So when I say a 7-day benefit waiting period, that's not correct. It's a 7-day, you have to be out for 7 days before you're eligible for it. However, it goes back to, paid family leave goes back to the first day out.
Okay. So here's a scenario. Okay. I am gone for 1 day because I put all my doctor's appointments in 1 day and get this hellacious day over with. I go to the dentist, I go to the eye doctor, I go to every person in my life.
Yep.
That 1 day now has to come out of my sick bank, which would otherwise have came out of ESST. Is that where we are feeling the potential pain on that?
I mean, yes, essentially.
And how do we talk to people about that? Like, yes, that's happening, but we have Minnesota paid leave that we're paying for now, but you can only use that in scenarios that maybe are a little bit more significant and not day to day.
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm coming at? How do I have that conversation?
And I will say, like, this is, you know, we would just try to get people to think about this whole set of changes holistically. Because this one part of it, this part of the pie, it's takeaway. It is. It absolutely is. And we've acknowledged that this is kind of the negative part of the whole picture. But on the whole, there's so much more time available now, paid time for people, that they're able to take. And so we think too, some of your sick bank will be preserved because you've got the paid. So it's kind of like the earn sick and save. Yes, it's going to dig into your sick bank a bit, but your sick bank isn't going to get depleted so badly because you got Minnesota paid. So it's all like this little like infrastructure of how you'll use time will be different. And on the whole, the additional amount of time is so profound. And the state of Minnesota really is a bit of a disservice for how we set things up and then changing those rules. We just felt the intent here isn't to provide all of that time for earn sick and safe time purposes. We've got a lot of ample time available through the academic disability and through sick time. And then those programs are fully supported or further supported by Minnesota paid. It kind of amps those programs up. So it's a design decision. We did make the decision to, stop the accrual on Earn Sick and Safe. We realize it's probably the one design feature that people won't like. But we're also looking at fiscal stewardship. We're looking at, if we do something like that, maybe there's some other benefits we could offer down the road that would set us apart a little bit more, distinguish us. So we're just trying to kind of balance it all out. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, although we're going to have to go back to using our sick bank, which we haven't had ESST super long, right? But we've had it long enough that people know what it is. So even though we have to go back to using our sick bank for managing small personal appointments, it's okay that we use that sick bank because it is not the one and only benefit that we have to support us in a long-term emergency any longer. Right? Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Like, sometimes we get scared about using it because we want to bank it in case something happens that, we need, right? That's that 6 weeks, that 12 weeks. And now we don't have to maybe personally be as concerned about using the sick bank because there's an additional benefit out there backing us up for the longer term, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 18 weeks. So that's what I'm hearing from you, in addition to the university having to make a fiscally responsible choice, which, that always is tough. And that's maybe the conversation that we could help our colleagues with. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to interrupt now and say that we could get Ray's last question, and then we probably have to move on to get to the rest of our agenda. I want to thank you, Mary, Jamie, and Lauren. This has been an amazing amount of information, and I'm sure that we will have questions going forward, and those should be directed to
Jamie. Would
Yep.
you ever?
Yes. Yep. You can send them to
Okay.
me. And yes, or like Mary said too, if they're coming, don't get to the OHR contact center, could also get them to me as well. But they can definitely just reach out to me directly.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, and Dina put a feedback form out for everyone. And so, Ray, if you want to get your last question.
Yeah, I just think, just from a clarification standpoint, that although you're presenting these to us holistically and it all relates to the same thing, ESST and the Minnesota paid leave are fundamentally two different things. And the one could have changed without the Minnesota paid leave even being enacted, because that's clarification as to how the program's being used, and it expands how we can use our sick leave, which was much more restrictive in the past. So that's one of the changes that we see in it.
Yeah,
But they're
exactly
fundamentally
right.
two different things that are interacting together in the overall leave scenario.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. And the timing, because of that rule clarification this summer, like lined up with the Minnesota paid leave. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I want to again thank you, Mary, Jamie, Lauren. It was great. We're going to move on to our new business. The first thing is the rules change that we have, and Charles Rank is going to present that for us.
Thank you. So in the agenda, there should be a link under item 7, which is to a feedback form, and that also will have some background information on some of the rules changes. So what we're looking at with these rules changes is, again, it's relating to policy name changes and removal of certain language that is no longer in accordance with federal regulations and even university policy. So in Rule 6.3.2, there is a reference to, where did I put that? There is a reference to the order of preference in hiring that may be changed by the Equal Opportunity Office in accordance with affirmative action policies of the Board of Regents. However, the Board of Regents no longer has a affirmative action policy. And there, I believe, also was an executive order in January that causes this to be kind of a liability for us. So we are removing this language in compliance. And you'll see in the red line document, there's also several places where language has to be changed to just keep up to date with the policy. So there was a Title IX policy called sexual harassment, sexual assault, and other forms of sex discrimination. And that has been renamed to sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, and relationship violence. So that is just purely a policy name update. And it looks like, was there an access issue here with the form?
Kayla
Yeah.
is saying she hasn't been able to open any of the forms.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I get a thing saying that people on outside campuses don't have access, so I'm working on that. I don't understand what that's about.
Oh, is that because they have that dot something else? Okay.
Mhm.
Kayla,
But I'm
can you
working on
bear
it.
with us while we work this out?
Oh, does it say, is it?
She says that
is it-
she's in.
Okay, I changed it to anyone with the link, so hopefully that will help. But it
Yeah,
says
it might have been
he's
anyone
outside
with the
of
link
my
in the
office.
domain,
Yeah.
which would be the Twin Cities domain for us. Okay, so got it. So yeah, so those are the changes. That's some of the changes. It's not being voted on today. So what we need to do for the way the process works. So the Rules Committee meets next week. We will be voting on this, and then CSCC, I believe, also needs to vote on this. So that will probably be a virtual vote. We've done that before. And then there will be a public hearing on Friday, November 7th at noon, and all of you are welcome to come. And then this will go before the Board of Regents in their December 11th and 12th meeting. We don't have the docket. That docket is not set yet, so I can't tell you for sure if it's on that. I believe that's usually a Thursday or Friday, so I don't know if it's which day that is yet, but it will be in that meeting as well. And then I don't know how the agenda works from here, but Rosemary, you have a question?
Yes, I just had a quick thought that we had discussed that the meeting, the open, the public forum is like an open house, and so people only need to come in for like a minute to make their comment or whatever, right? Or their vote.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So none of you should feel like you have to come, but if you are interested in rules or this specific change, you're welcome to come for sure. But we will, it'll literally just be,
The four
like,
of
I'm
us
sure.
looking at each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like Dina, Ray, Rosemary, Daryl, and I most likely will be, I mean, I'll definitely be there and I'll give that same spiel. And then it will just be open to any civil service employee who wants to ask any questions about the process and about the specific changes. Ray?
And just to mention, the process is a little bit accelerated. It's the assuming that we will vote in favor of all of this and that the public hearing and everything is all scheduled, but the majority of this is compliance and administrative changes. So the underlying, real impact is fairly small, and it's changes that need to get put in place. So it's kind of on an accelerated time schedule.
Exactly. Yep.
And rules would normally be socialized to the community. So
exactly. Yep. So this is very much the Title IX office and OHR approached us saying that these need to change due to the current administration's so-called illegal discrimination practices that they're.
Yeah. Okay, so with the form, that's only, that's optional. If you want feedback on these rules, to fill out the form and submit it. I want to make sure we have enough time for Daryl to talk about professional development. Was there anything else, Charles, you needed to wrap it up or not? You feel like?
Nope,
you
that's
got
all.
your stuff?
Just this is for the whole Civil Service Senate to be aware the changes.
Okay, and I'm gonna say, this was the thing that I meant to say. Well, Mary, Mary was there. They had the wellness points for learning about shared governance, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for that. I sent a letter to people in the School of Dentistry who are civil service. And I did get several responses of people who said that they made contact with either subcommittees or the Senate office. So sending out an email to people who you know who are civil service is a good way to get people to join the civil service. And being able to get 200 wellness points for finding out about shared governance is nice too. So now without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Daryl.
Wait, can I go real quick? Mine will take 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
First, I'll just say we had to move that to a webinar because we have 500 people who want to come to that session. So we may have to break it up, but whatever. My pitch is we obviously need more people in University Senate. We need 14. So if there is anyone here who has not already thrown their name in the hat, please send me an email if you would like to join the University Senate. If we don't get 14 more people, then we will do a special election in November. So that's all I had. And I will throw it to Daryl unless there are questions.
Thanks,
I'm
Daryl, for
speed
waiting
running
so long.
this so we can get everything else in the next 13 minutes. So one of our initiatives that we are tackling this year is creating professional development opportunities for civil service employees. And I have constructed a timeline where we can sort of gather ideas, see which are feasible, and then start rolling things out. So right now we're in the gathering ideas phase. So that means I need all of you to think about things. And I have gotten things from several people in this room already. So thank you very much for sending me stuff. So professional development, it can be anything. Send me your ideas via email to daryl@umn.edu. It's my first name. It's easy. Just like Rosemary is rosemary@umn.edu. I'm Daryl. So no idea is too big. So what I'm going to do is gather all the ideas. And this is from CSCC and all of you on Civil Service Senate. I'm then going to bring it to our next meeting with OHR, with Mary and Jim. So they can basically serve as our operators, connecting us to the right places where we can seek resources. And this is also the phase where we can say, is this a feasible thing for us to tackle? Or is it not? And if it is feasible, is it something we can do in the next few months to offer some things in the short term? Or is it something that we can work on in the long term? So once we sort of bounce the ideas off of them or the resources that they point us to for specific ideas, then we are going to give some of these to the subcommittees because it's not going to be just compensation and benefits or outreach that is tackling this. It's going to be sort of a cross-functional sort of thing where we're going to have ideas that touch each of the subcommittees and see what we can develop and then move forward. So again, no idea is too big. Please email me your professional development ideas that you think that we can pull off at the university for civil service employees, and we can start getting cracking on that list. It's something that I'm really excited about, and it's going to be a long-term process because we don't just want one session that's one and done. I want to keep offering different things as we move forward this year and next year. So that's the big project that I'm working on as your chair-elect right now. So are there any questions out there or comments? I'm not seeing anything, so
I forgot to raise my hand. I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Have you gotten responses about it?
I have. So a list has been started, and I have it in a Google Doc that's just mine right now. And then once I clean that up a bit after I get all the ideas, then I will share it internally with our small group, and then they'll keep expanding. And I'm really excited. And it's my hope that we have one or two things rolled out already by the time we have our spring meeting of the Civil Service Senate.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I actually think, Dina, do you still need to talk about elections, or do you want to introduce us to your dog?
No, I got everything out about my elections. That's Laura Dannon. She's impatient because it's almost lunchtime.
So we had open discussion on our agenda. Is there any points that anyone wants to discuss?
I just have a quick question. I'm wondering how to better connect with the other civil service constituents that are in my department and maybe as broad as the college. Are there lists that we can access? Because I work with a bunch of like PNA or postdoc type folks who are, not in civil service, but is there a quick and easy way that we can get access to names and emails?
Yes, there is. There we have a constituent list that is pulled for us every month. It's just a giant data dump, but let me get maybe I'll send out an email later. I'll ask the communications team to send out an email and maybe explain the constituent list. So look for it in a little bit. They just got started, but yes, there is a list and it is open to all of our senators. So we will get it to you shortly.
Thank you for that question. This is Sarah, just as the communications chair. That is on our agenda for our 1 o'clock meeting. So that is very timely. I appreciate the question. I personally struggle with that as well. And Dina, I really appreciate that response. So we'll look at that data dump and figure out what communications and outreach can do to better help cover the tools that we need, right, to communicate with our people. So I appreciate that. And I'm open to feedback on how to best do that as well. So if anybody wants to let me know or has experience with it, feel free to send me an email at sbackman.
All right, cool. Okay, anyone else have a point to discuss today? Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. I guess we are adjourned. Do I need to call for okay, if someone could make a motion to adjourn. Can I make the motion to
So
adjourn?
moved. I think you can entertain the motion.
Okay, I'm entertaining it. Gonna have it over
I'll
for
move it.
dinner, serve it a few drinks. Okay,
Second.
and so you're seconding it, Ray? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? All right, well then we'll see you in April if you're solely civil service senators. If you're in any of the other constituent groups, I will probably see you long before then. Everyone take care.